So first, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that watched my video last week. I absolutely love making these videos. It's one of the things that I'm super passionate about. I love teaching. I love helping people figure out how to get the images in their head onto their camera, onto the screen, and out for everyone to see. So please keep asking questions, not just about this video or last week's video, but about anything photography related. Whether that's the camera, the editing, the lenses, or gear, anything at all. I just love talking about photography. So today is probably the most frequently asked question I get, and that's what camera should I buy? Nikon, Canon, some people have Sony, Fuji, there's a million different cameras, and I get that question all the time. So first off, we use Nikon. I have probably a dozen Nikon cameras, and the reason I have a dozen Nikon cameras and 0 Canons is because that was the first camera I had. So about 10 years ago, I got a D40 and it was awesome. But the cool thing is that the lenses from that Nikon D40 I can still use on my cameras now. So Nikon cameras, you can use all of their old lenses on current bodies. So that's awesome. So there was no reason for me to switch to Canon or anything. Long video, really short answer. If you get Nikon or Canon, you're good. There's not a huge difference in those two. I would say to try and avoid the other brands for now, just because there's not as many third-party lenses. So say if you're looking for a 50mm or a 70 to 200 or one of the more popular lenses, a lot of manufacturers make those. So there's like Tamron, there's Sigma, there's some Chinese brands that make awesome manual focus lenses, but a lot of those third party are just for Nikon or Canon. And then also Nikon and Canon have been on the market for forever. So there's a lot of really good used gear for those two brands. While the other cameras like Sony and Fuji and Olympus, all of those, there's not quite as much as a selection, I guess, for the lenses and the bodies. So the prices are going to be higher because you have to buy them from the manufacturer. There's not really third-party options. So with that being said, there are some differences in Nikon versus Canon. In May, when Sarah was out with our baby, the girls that shot with me, I think all 4 of them had Canon cameras. And when we were editing those photos, what we noticed is that the white balance and the tones were just more pleasing to skin tones. So it required less editing. The skin tones in Canon just seem to be a little bit nicer, require a little bit less editing. And then the thing with Nikon is the dynamic range in a Nikon camera is just awesome. You can take the shadows. So if you shoot a picture and there's super dark shadows, you can brighten those shadows a lot better than you can with Canon. So a lot of portrait photographers, people that shoot people, they use Canon, and a lot of people that shoot architecture, landscape, things where you need to bring up the shadows a lot will shoot Nikon. But there's such a negligible difference, it really doesn't matter much. For instance, the monitor you're looking at your pictures on plays a bigger difference in the tones than the Canon or Nikon sensor. The lens that you're shooting with actually alters the color a little bit. And then, of course, your editing. So I would say that there's such a negligible difference in the tones and the colors from Nikon and Canon. As long as you have one of those two, that's fine. There's not a huge difference. I don't think anybody would ever notice the difference unless you looked at thousands of images a week like we do. So while I was thinking about this video, I was like, who looks at Nikon and Canon all the time? Because mostly we're just Nikon. In May we saw Canon and we did see a little bit of a difference, but we edited the pictures to match, so it didn't really matter after post-production. So someone that sees a lot of Nikon, Canon, Sony, third-party pictures is Rob from Lynchburg Photoworks. And every single day, he's going through hundreds and hundreds of pictures and he sees everything. So I went over there today and I asked him a little bit about the differences in Nikon and Canon. And here is what he had to say.
Some of the things that I have noticed that's difference between Canon and Nikon from a print standpoint has been color. And in recent years, a lot of those things have gotten much better. There's a smaller gap between Canon and Nikon than what there used to be. Nikon notoriously has tended to be a little bit on the cooler side, and Canon, quite notoriously as well, has tended to be on the warmer side. This still holds true, but it's a much smaller gap between the two. You can do a lot of things in post to bring them closer together. One of the other things that I've noticed is that when printing shadow details, a Nikon camera typically has better shadow detail, and Canons typically will be a little bit closer to actual skin tones and requires a little bit less post-processing to do it. So there's really just a few differences between the two, but they're not massive by any stretch of the imagination, and certainly not as big as they used to be.
So you can see that Rob said a lot of what I said, is that there's really not too much of a difference. There's a little bit of difference in the tones, but it really doesn't matter. When it boils down to it, it really doesn't matter. Your editing has more to do with the tones than anything at all. The monitor, your lens, everything, it all works together, so you're not going to notice a big difference. And that's just the colors. As far as the button layouts on the cameras, that's a little bit different. How they work is a little bit different. But especially if you shoot in manual mode like most professional photographers, there's not a difference. You're not going to notice a difference. So that's my answer on Nikon or Canon. Just get one of those two and you're good.